Imagine being trapped in a place where time stands still, where hope fades away, and the screams of desperation are the only music that accompanies your days. Welcome to the most terrifying prisons in the world, where humanity is a distant memory and human rights are just a whisper in the dark. In this video, we will explore the earthly hells that many call prisons, from Guantanamo Bay, where torturers act with impunity, to the ruthless concentration camp of Khan in North Korea, where life is a perpetual punishment. Get ready to uncover the darkest secrets of these infernal places where death becomes a release and madness lurks at every turn. Do you dare to look at what lies behind the bars? The truth is more horrifying than you can imagine. Stay with us, because what you are about to see could change your perception of the world forever. In the first prison on this list, things are beyond hellish for these prisoners, Guantanamo Bay. When one of the most powerful governments in the world sets up a prison to crack down on terrorism, you know that inmates are in for a wild ride under the harshest possible conditions. These conditions are so severe that some inmates die, unable to bear the harsh treatment they are subjected to. After the September 11th attacks, President George Bush, as part of his war on terror, set up the Guantanamo Bay detention camp to contain terrorists, especially those with connections to the tragic 9/11 attacks. Reports shared by a non-profit organization, the Center for Constitutional Rights, revealed shocking details about the torture and inhumane living conditions inmates face here. These reports showed that inmates were deprived of sleep, subjected to 20-hour interrogations, and placed in solitary confinement. These brutal conditions have led to the deaths of many inmates at this facility, with prison authorities officially reporting the cause of death as suicide. However, past inmates at this facility dispute the cause of these deaths. Former inmate Murat Kurnaz, in his book, suggested that some men were actually killed, possibly beaten to death or even strangled. Well, if you think Guantanamo prison is hell on earth, then you haven't heard of the next prison, Bang Kwang. This prison is known by many as one of the harshest in the world. With a reputation like this, it's no surprise that the living conditions here have caused many prisoners to lose either their lives or their sanity. The Bang Kwang Central Prison is one place where you wouldn't last very long. This prison is reserved for inmates serving long sentences and those on death row. The conditions here are deplorable, with inmates having access to limited resources due to the overcrowding situation. In this living hell, inmates are forced to wear leg shackles all day for their first 6 months. For those on death row, these shackles never come off until their execution. New reports further reveal that this barbaric practice was stopped in 2013. Despite canceling the leg shackles practice, former inmate Jonathan Wheeler shared that the living conditions for prisoners remain very poor. He revealed that he shared a small cell with 17 others, noting that the facility was rife with cockroaches, bugs, drugs, violence, and limited access to food, clean water, and medical treatment. Solitary confinement at this facility is a nightmare of its own. Another inmate exposed the guards at this facility for being corrupt, adding that these guards go as far as framing inmates who fail to give in to their extortion. However, there is a little hope. Inmates have come forward to reveal that life at Bang Kwang is a bit more bearable if a prisoner has money to give to the guards. But if you think you can survive at Guantanamo by bribing the guards, what will you do in the next prison, controlled entirely by the inmates themselves, San Pedro Prison? Despite housing close to 3,000 inmates, when it was originally designed for about 500, the severe overcrowding concern is the least of the problems for inmates here. This prison is run entirely by the prisoners, with guards posted at the facility having no control over the activities inside. One guard remarked, "There are 20 of us and 2,000 of them. 20 police officers for more than 2,000 prisoners. We're powerless. We can't do anything." With the guards here powerless, activities inside the prison are overseen by leaders chosen among the inmates, notorious for using force, torture, and extortion as a means of enforcing their orders. In this prison, violence, rape, drug abuse, and limited access to medical facilities are a common theme. Due to this, inmates unable to adjust to these harsh conditions are left to die, with official reports classifying them simply as missing. In this prison, inmates face even worse conditions, with those not killed straight away forced to continue their lives at the very bottom of this prison society. Well, wait until you hear about this next facility totally under the strict control of North Korea Kan Internment Camp, also known as Camp 14. This North Korean prison, set up in 1959, isn't your typical prison. It's a labor camp for alleged political prisoners, and even their families are not spared, kids included. So if one family member gets in trouble, the whole clan ends up there too. Once sent here, inmates know it is for life, and they are subjected to hard manual labor. Just try to picture 15,000 people crammed in an overcrowded place, working away in coal mines, agriculture, or factories, and making everything from textiles to ceramics. From Shin Dong-hyuk, the only prisoner recorded to have successfully escaped this facility, we know that inmates here are tortured. In his published book, he revealed that he was burned, tortured, and had his finger mangled from a guard pulling out his fingernail. Marks on his body also revealed several forms of torture he was subjected to. In one of his various speeches where he described his life at this camp and subsequent escape, he remarked, "There's a word animal, yet even animals in the camp lived a better life than we did. The guards who owned the dogs and cats in the camp fed them better than we were fed." If you think that you can survive North Korea's prison camp, do you think you can survive Russia's Black Dolphin? Imagine the treatment of inmates in a facility where they are not even regarded as humans. To call them people makes your tongue bend backwards just to say it. I've never felt any sympathy for them. Russia's Black Dolphin is that prison where inmates are sentenced to life, but it's just death in disguise. Officially known as the Federal Penitentiary Service of Russian Orenburg Oblast, this facility houses the absolute worst criminals, from serial killers to pedophiles to cannibals. Life for inmates here is just pure horror. Reports tell of inmates being tortured, including being electrocuted in their testicles. The torture is so brutal it leaves prisoners with burst veins and battered legs. They are also under watch 24/7 by the guards at this facility. The psychological torture that inmates here face is also severe, as they are denied any form of human contact and even blindfolded when being transported from cell to cell inside the prison. Due to the nature of the crimes committed by prisoners at this facility, their only way out is death. Next we go all the way to Brazil, where this prison is the stuff of nightmares. It's called the Alcacuz prison. While also facing other issues like overcrowding and a lack of adequate medical facilities, the regular occurrence of violence is the main reason why this Brazilian prison, located in the crime-ridden city of Natal, is feared. This prison is deadly because it has long been a battleground for rival drug cartels, as many of its inmates are gang members. Inside these walls, no one is safe from the ongoing gang war. In 2017, a riot broke out, resulting in the death of over 20 prisoners. Prisoners here have also voiced complaints that they do not have regular access to legal assistance and medical care. Some relatives have shared that inmates with knife or gunshot wounds from various riots rarely receive proper treatment. If you think you can survive the physical violence here, check out this next prison where prisoners actually beg for death. ADX Florence. Officially known as the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, this prison was created due to the state needing a specific facility to house inmates considered too dangerous for other maximum security prisons, also known as Supermax. This facility is a reflection of the extreme conditions inmates here are forced to live under. The living conditions here are designed to affect the inmate's mental state. Prisoners here are required to spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in their 7 by 12-foot concrete cells. The cell windows at this facility are tiny, and prisoners are also expected to get their food through a small hole in their doors. During the 1-hour period where prisoners are allowed recreation, they are in restraint, and their break is usually in an outdoor small cage. All these harsh conditions eventually take a toll on the mental health of inmates here. So it's little wonder why some inmates at this facility commit suicide as a way to end the psychological torture. A former warden at this facility described it as a clean version of hell. Travis Dusenbury, a former inmate who spent almost 10 years at this facility, revealed that, unlike other prisons, inmates here are completely shut off from the world. As the saying goes, freedom of speech should be respected, but freedom after speech is exactly not guaranteed. And in this next prison, speaking against the Iranian government is a sure ticket to the hellish world in there. Evin Prison. This facility is notorious for holding political prisoners. The authorities here use torture, threats of torture, deception, humiliation, and multiple daily interrogations lasting up to 5 or 6 hours. They also deny inmates medical care and family visits. Anousheh Ashuri, a former inmate at this prison, revealed that he had to deal with enormous rodents, cockroaches, bedbugs, overcrowding, and bad food while he was held here. Another inmate also revealed that the inmates at this prison were plagued with many infections because the majority of the pillows and blankets were dirty and infested with insects. In addition to the hardships from the authorities, violence and riots among inmates here have proven to be fatal. In 2022, there was a fire incident as a result of riots between prisoners at the facility, which caused the death of 8 inmates. Islands are cool, but this next island is one place prisoners really avoid: Rikers Island. Back again in the United States, we have Rikers Island, a prison so deadly it has the reputation of being more dangerous than the roughest streets in the city. Despite battling problems such as overcrowding, crumbling infrastructure, and staffing shortages, this facility has a reputation for violence, physical abuse, mental abuse, and neglect of its inmates. This has attracted press and judicial scrutiny, and has resulted in numerous rulings against the New York City government. Even the guards at this facility are not left out, as convicts have repeatedly assaulted uniformed officers and other civilian workers. A former inmate at this facility revealed that the situation at Rikers was designed just to dehumanize people as much as possible and break down their psyche. Since 2022, there have been over 30 recorded deaths in this facility, with the majority occurring as a result of limited medical access and suicide. In this next prison, the guards who are meant to protect prisoners can't even save them from the armed inmates. There, in Bogota, Colombia, we have La Modelo. La Modelo prison is feared by many due to its brutal conditions and terrifying atmosphere. This facility is seriously overcrowded. We all know what happens when you cram too many people in one place. It gets nasty, fights break out, tempers flare, and before you know it, you've got a full-blown riot on your hands. Now imagine the majority of prisoners here belong to opposing groups. In this prison, far-right paramilitary groups and FARC guerrilla factions control various sections of the facility and are constantly at each other's throats, leading to gang violence and even deaths. Since inmates are armed, riots are common. The lack of medical care, inadequate food, and limited water make La Modelo a dangerous place to be. No one is coming to save you here, as the guards cannot effectively control the inmates, leaving them to fend for themselves in this lawless environment. Now think of a prison where inmates die, but instead of being buried, they are eaten by other inmates. That's the Gitarama prison, now called the Muhanga Correctional Center, in Rwanda. This facility is a nightmare for all due to severe overcrowding. The facility, meant for just 600 inmates, houses 7,000. The conditions here are shocking. Prisoners die from preventable diseases due to the sheer lack of resources. In fact, it was once reported that the living conditions at this facility were so severe that some inmates resorted to feeding on the bodies of dead inmates to survive. Although these allegations of cannibalism have been debunked, living conditions remain dire. The floors are so overcrowded that inmates have to sleep standing up. Many prisoners live with open wounds and infections, as there is little to no medical care available. The brutality of life in Gitarama makes it one of the deadliest places on Earth. In this next prison, if the prison itself doesn't kill inmates, the guards might. It's the Georgian Guldani prison. This prison is infamous for its extreme human rights abuses, exposed in leaked videos in 2012 that showed guards torturing and sexually abusing prisoners, sparking outrage and protests in Georgia. Former prisoners have terrifying stories about their experiences in Guldani prison. One shared that he was beaten, insulted, drowned in a bucket of water, and threatened with rape. Another recounted that his fingernails were torn off, his skull damaged, and his leg bones, ribs, nose, and teeth broken. Other inmates spoke about being hit on the head with the butt of a gun, having their wrists broken by guards' boots, and being forced to give evidence under the influence of sleeping pills. Conditions grow worse with overcrowded cells, poor ventilation, inadequate sanitation, and limited access to clean water and nutritious food. When a prison is dubbed the period of barbarity and the hell of Diyarbakir, it is quite literally a living coffin. Known as Diyarbakir Prison, built in 1980, this facility has a brutal reputation due to the extreme torture inflicted on prisoners. Designed to hold 700 inmates, it houses significantly more. However, overcrowding is the least of the problems here. Inmates reported being subjected to various forms of torture, including being stripped naked, blindfolded, hosed with water, and relentlessly intimidated. Female inmates, although kept in a separate ward, endured similar horrific torture. Between 1981 and 1984 alone, it was recorded that 34 inmates lost their lives. Can you survive torture? How about being a victim of gang violence? In this next prison, you have to stay wary of gangs both inside and outside the prison. The Cerezo No. 3 State Prison, located in Mexico, is notorious for its brutal conditions and extreme violence. It's also overcrowded, resulting in a serious lack of basic necessities. Inmates face inadequate food, poor sanitation, and minimal medical care. This facility is known to house many of Mexico's gang leaders, making violence rampant as gangs hold significant power within the prison walls. Extortion, assaults, and murders are common, and those not affiliated with a gang are at constant risk. Inmates here must also fear threats from outside. In January 2023, a gang stormed the facility, causing the deaths of 19 inmates. Corrupt and poorly paid guards often do little to maintain order, sometimes even participating in the violence. It's a brutal, lawless environment where survival is a daily struggle. Returning to the cold regime of Russia, we have the Patak Island prison, often called the Alcatraz of Russia. The Patak Island prison is designed to hold some of Russia's most dangerous prisoners. Like Alcatraz in the US, this facility is surrounded by water, reminding inmates that escape is nothing more than a wish. The inhumane regime in Patak Island prison, even the toughest inmates are said to be crushed by the harsh conditions. A prison psychologist at this facility has commented that the place destroys people. Each prisoner is confined to a very small two-man cell for 22.5 hours every day, with only 1.5 hours allowed outside in a small cage. Inmates have minimal contact with the outside world, permitted just 2 visits a year for their first 10-year sentence. Those who die here are buried in a small nearby graveyard with only 1 or 2 guards in attendance. No other prisoners are allowed. Prisoners who misbehave are sent to punishment cells, where they are locked in a small, dark room equipped only with a metal bucket and a fold-down bed for 15 days. No books are allowed, and during the day, the bed is stowed, leaving prisoners to stand or sit on a narrow wooden perch. In Egypt, while tourists admire the pyramids, prisoners live in fear of the Scorpion Prison. Officially known as the Torah Prison, 9,992 maximum security, this facility in Helwan, Egypt, is used for political prisoners and opponents of the Egyptian government. The conditions here are extremely harsh. Inmates are denied access to soap, shampoo, toothbrushes, and even books or writing materials, leading to health issues due to poor hygiene. There are no beds. Prisoners sleep on concrete floors using blankets or cardboard as cushioning. Medical care is scarce, with guards often confiscating medications sent by families and blocking outside treatments. At one point, inmates went on hunger strikes to protest their terrible conditions but were forced to eat through violence. Physical abuse is common, with prisoners regularly beaten and humiliated. The Scorpion prison environment is dehumanizing, affecting both the physical and mental health of its inmates. In Peru, the Chalapa prison is one of the most feared facilities in the country. Located 4,600 feet above sea level in the mountains, it subjects inmates to freezing temperatures year-round. Overcrowded cells lack basic medical facilities, making illness a severe threat. Food and water are scarce and often contaminated, leading to poor nutrition. Prisoners here suffer mistreatment from guards, with beatings and torture frequently reported. Human rights organizations have called for the prison's closure due to these abuses, but it remains operational. The prison's remote location restricts visits, leaving inmates isolated. Once again in Russia, we come to the infamous Vladimir Central Prison, built in 1783 and notorious for its brutal conditions. Picture overcrowded dark cells where detainees endure frigid temperatures due to unreliable heating. Meals consist of thin soup and a slice of bread, with potatoes being a rare treat. Human rights organizations describe the treatment here as psychologically destructive, comparable to the Soviet gulags. Guards impose harsh punishments for minor infractions, with former inmates recalling regular beatings for seemingly no reason. Complaining often results in worse treatment. Some prisons not only harm inmates within their walls, but continue to impact their health after release. At Dry Prison in Tibet, the harsh treatment of political detainees and severe human rights abuses are widely reported. Solitary confinement is common, and many prisoners are monks or nuns imprisoned for peaceful protests. Despite their peaceful backgrounds, they face brutal torture meant to crush their spirits. Numerous prisoners have died under suspicious circumstances here, with the lack of medical care worsening the situation. Even released prisoners are not spared, as many mysteriously die shortly after leaving due to the abuse endured. If you found this list of intense prisons fascinating, click on any of the cards on your screen to explore more jaw-dropping stories. What we have explored today are the darkest and most disturbing secrets of humanity, a journey into the depths of cruelty and suffering that many would prefer to ignore. Each prison we have visited is a chilling reminder of how power can corrupt and strip human beings of their essence. But the question lingers: how can such places exist in a world that is said to be civilized? As you reflect on these stories of pain and desolation, do not forget that knowledge is the first step towards change. I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Which prison impacted you the most? What story left you breathless? If you have been fascinated by this dark journey, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video, where we will reveal more unsettling truths hidden in the shadows of society. Remember, the truth can be painful, but it is the first step to facing our fears. Until next time, stay curious and don't let the darkness consume you.